Gaelic Hustla, hello everybody. My name is Jody Wilson Raybould. My traditional name is Kuglas, and I come from the Muskama, Dzawadanic, and Likwitha people, part of the Kwakwaka'wakw, also known as the Kwakwala speaking people of Northern Vancouver Island on the west coast of British Columbia. I'm incredibly pleased to be saying a few words about the other people, of which I am one, and grateful to have had the opportunity to speak to many different communities, to different classrooms about the work of the other people, which in my mind is the coming together of some extraordinary individuals from various walks of life with different worldviews to talk about the issues that are pressing, that are facing our country and that are facing us internationally around inequality, around inclusion or the lack of inclusion, around equity issues, to be able to create a safe place to have these conversations and to recognize the diversity that exists between and among us all. I was raised, fortunately, by a very loving and supportive family. I'm proud to be an Indigenous woman in this country. The values, the principles that I was raised with was to believe and work towards equity, equality, inclusion, and justice. And my grandmother and my parents raised me to understand our culture, our traditions, to speak our language, and to know the laws of our big house, which is our system of government, and to know that everybody in our community has a role to play to ensure that our community is functioning properly. And when somebody is inhibited from playing their role, then the community suffers. It's these principles and values that have led me and been the foundation of the various roles that I've been fortunate enough to play in my life, which some of them being a Crown prosecutor, being the British Columbia Regional Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, up to and including my most recent roles, which is being a member of Parliament for Vancouver Granville and being the Minister of Justice and Attorney General. As an Indigenous person, I certainly, in all of those different roles and throughout my life, have faced many challenges and also many opportunities. Challenges being around discrimination and racism, marginalization. Certainly the reality of Indigenous peoples in this country is one that has a long shadow cast over it in terms of the colonial legacy. A colonial legacy that we are working incredibly hard to outrun. So my reason for being in the other people is to continue to have these really important conversations about our diversity, about the fundamental nature of our interconnectedness as human beings, and to build on the expertise that we all have, the different worldviews, to work towards and celebrate our diversity for one, to work to end racism everywhere, and to support building unity and social cohesion, building justice, living the teachings of my ancestors, which is to know that we all have a role to play in ensuring our community functions properly. So I'm looking forward to continuing to do the important work that I think we are doing and to create the safe places where we can continue to have these important conversations. So Gaelic Hustla, thank you very much.
Today is the International Day to End Racism, and what would be a better time for the members of this phenomenal team to introduce ourselves to the public, so to speak. The whole purpose of our team, The Other People, is for individuals, students, but we hope beyond that, will come to understand and put faces and names together with individuals of various religions, ethnic grouping, cultural, and so on. We have come together because we honestly believe that individually we cannot end and fight, whether it be Islamophobia, bigotry against the Black community, the Asian community, the Sikh community, the Christian community, the Indigenous community, the Muslim community, the Jewish community. We can't do it individually. We need to come together as a force. We also, because we believe that this is what Canada needs to look like and needs to, for individuals to be able to see and hear what a true representation, not of everybody, but certainly of some 98% of the people in British Columbia can identify either religiously, culturally, ethnically, with who we are and what we represent. We've been asked to talk about what type of stereotypes have we faced in our lives. Well, for me as a Jew, as a rabbi, but more importantly as a Jew, not just as a rabbi, I have, I guess since I can remember, back when I was 7 or 8 years old, being accused of being a Christ killer, responsible for the death of the major historical religious figure within Christianity. That is something that I have had to deal with for my entire life, as well as all of the canards against Jews that have come down through the centuries, that we're in charge of the finances of the world, we're in charge of this, we're in charge of that, which is quite interesting when you consider that Jews represent 0.19% of the world's population. We didn't even make it to 0.2. We're 0.19 and actually shrinking down of the world's population. Are Jews involved in finance? Absolutely, as Jews are involved with all sorts of things. Historically, I think it's important to understand that one of the reasons Jews went into professions and went into finance is that when we were thrown out of a country, and we've been thrown out of almost every single country in Europe, except for countries like India or even China, certainly not Europe, but when we settled in a new country, we were forbidden to own land. Well, if you're forbidden to own land, what do you do as an occupation? What do you do to survive? You need to do other things. In Canada, there had to be a separate vote in Parliament for the Jews to get the vote. In Canada, we were discriminated and continue to be. Here in the Lower Mainland, the North Shore, there was a covenant on property that if you bought a piece of land, you had to agree that you would not sell it ever to an Indigenous individual or a Jew. And those covenants existed up into the 1950s and 60s and even 70s. I later learned that those covenants existed also in Kerrisdale with certain property as well. When we come together, we can do unbelievable things. And what we're learning today, as a result of this horrible, horrible war that's going on in Ukraine, it's not about the I, it's not about the me, it's about the us. There's a war today because of a single individual who only thinks about what's good for him, not even for the Russian people, what's good for him and his legacy. That's not the way we operate. It's not what Canada is all about. Thank you.
Everybody, I join you today at the UN International Day for Elimination of Racial Discrimination. It's important that we add our voices for action against racism. By doing that, how do we do this? We do that by creating meaningful dialogue and conversation that we're having today. The world is not a perfect place. We face many challenges, and we hope we can all band together and fight for each other's justice. All of us have equal dignity and rights, and we must stand up for human rights across the world and across our societies. It's important to remember some of us were deprived of educational opportunities not so long ago, based on who we are, our cultural background, or maybe even our religious background. We can make a difference today by ending stereotypes, by being active bystander when we see racism in our society in front of us, and also striving for education, educate people what racist systems and racism looks like in our daily lives. Only by banding together, by understanding the scope of the challenges we all face as a humanity, that we can achieve racial justice and equality on this somber day.
I was born and raised, my friends, in the province of Quebec. And even though I kind of look the part of a Quebecois, even though I have a French name and come from a distinctly French heritage, there was never any sense that I was going to be a welcome member of Quebec's distinct society when I was growing up. Why? Well, I was English speaking. Because when I spoke French, I spoke it with a school-taught French, and that immediately distinguished me from the vast majority of Quebecois. And because I was a Protestant in an overwhelmingly Roman Catholic culture. I just never fit in. I never felt comfortable being beyond my English enclave, my own friends, and it took me a long time to realize that, in fact, most of my friends were other people too, just like me. We didn't fit, we didn't belong, and we weren't that comfortable with the way society was going. Now, I'm part of the other people on a day like today, particularly because it's my conviction as a Christian pastor that the Christian church, in nearly all of its iterations over the past 2,000 years, has spent way too much of its time and effort supporting racism, bigotry, arrogance, and intolerance, all of which continue to plague us into this whatever world we are emerging. I'm part of the other people because it is my conviction that the Creator has called me to live as fully as possible into the way that Jesus taught his disciples, not the way the church has taught his disciples. And that way that Jesus taught was a way of compassion, of acceptance, of justice seeking, and of openness. And I'm here to offer, as part of the other people, my conviction that far too many people in the world experience the church as the very antithesis of everything that Jesus taught, the antithesis of compassion, of acceptance, of justice seeking, and of openness. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jamira Lovemore. I'm an Afro-Caribbean woman. I'm currently coming to you from the unceded and ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I am known in Vancouver for a variety of organizing and collective work, particularly around Black liberation and community support. Why am I in the other people? I've been asked to speak on panels in front of students at workplaces and on the evening news. And all of these mediums, all these outlets are powerful, but can be very one-sided, very one-dimensional. Racism is persistent in our society because structural pillars of white supremacy. And we need to break through these more conventional ways of speaking to each other and create dialogue to be able to actually move through the tougher parts that keep us in our own little camps. And that's what this is. The Other People is a living library. It's a space where students and administrators and us as the other people can be that for students. We can be that dialogue. growing up as one of or the only Black person in many of my classrooms, I can understand what it feels like to be that student. And my hope is that every time I walk into one of those spaces, I'm able to connect with students. I'm able to connect with students who are like me. I'm able to connect with students who are not like me, and they can maybe understand the impact of how they live their lives and what they might do and say to the other students around them. The most common stereotype I get about myself is that I'm either a drug dealer or that I'm violent, neither of which is true. People see me and many decide that I'm not worthy of their humanity or their empathy. I've been called the N-word several times. It's something that I had to reckon with in my adult, when I was young. First times it happened, it broke me up and made me upset. Then it started happening as I get older, and I learned to ignore it. And then as an adult, when I started doing my own anti-racism work, I recognized how messed up that is to even ignore that and how that was actually impacting me. A message to administrators, to students, to people that are watching this, is to do the work internally and with intention to fight racism. Do your personal work. Let that reveal to you what to do next. Realize how you have created your own harms, how you might perpetuate them still, and then choose to be anti-racist. It's a choice that we all have to make. Take that anti-racism education seriously, and then infuse it in what you do in your classrooms, into how you educate. This is how we get to communities, cities, schools, towns, hopefully countries, and maybe the world where we don't live with these harmful ways of looking at each other, and we can see each other for the humans we are.
Hi, everyone. My name is Inderjeet Singh. Everybody calls me Indy. I am a Sikh chaplain at the University of British Columbia, and I am a visible minority. And as you know, I'm a Sikh from my turban and my beautiful beard. I was born in Malaysia, which is predominantly a Muslim country. I was educated in a Catholic high school, and then I did my post-secondary education in Ohio, USA. I'm an educationist by practice, okay? And the idea of being part of a team like the other people is to basically share our experiences with you, grow inclusively, learn from one another, and share values that are important, and share all our vast experiences with you guys. Now, have I been discriminated? That is a common question that we always get. Of course I have. I have been discriminated. However, the optimist in me thinks that the reason why I was discriminated is because people were afraid that I was different. People were afraid that my practices may be different from the others. But let me assure you, I am, while I look different, my practices and my being is very much like a family. I'm very much like a father, son, a brother, or a friend that you may have in your high school, in your university, or even in your life. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about the South Asian and the Sikh community. We are very active in volunteer activities, and the Sikhs serve in the downtown Vancouver area, and we serve the homeless. We've been doing this for the last 15 years. And we are also very active to help in disasters. With the current war that is happening in Ukraine, there are Sikh capsules that have been working very actively in Ukraine, Poland, and even in Hungary to serve. Sikhs number about approximately 1 million in Canada now. We arrived in Canada in the late 1800s, and we served to defend Canada in the army. And of course, since that time, Sikhs have grown into many facets of community. They have become professionals like doctors and lawyers and teachers, and many of them serve in the business industry. Some of them have gotten into politics as well, right? We make up almost 2.5% of the Canadian population. And our remedy to our survival in this world is, this world has become a very small place now with the media. So we would like to ensure that, there is tolerance, there's inclusivity and equality among all people. So we look forward to sharing our knowledge with you and learning from each other. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you, is the traditional Muslim greeting for each other. I would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you today from the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. I make this acknowledgement to honor the First Peoples of Turtle Island, also known as Canada, for their successful millennia-long stewardship of the land, as well as to bring awareness to the continuing injustice that colonization is having on Indigenous peoples. My name is Tariq Taib. I'm a proud Canadian, born and raised in Canada, a proud British Columbian and Vancouverite. I'm also a Muslim. I have over 25 years experience in community service, and I've worked on building interfaith bridges that empower IBPOC communities. I'm a co-founder of the faith-based community convener for anti-racism initiatives in the province of British Columbia, Foundation for a Path Forward. I'm also co-founder of the Muslim Food Bank and Community Services. And lastly, I'm a former executive of the largest Muslim organization in British Columbia, the BC Muslim Association. Why I joined the other people? A little background, I grew up in a small town called Fort St. John, BC. There was one channel, the CBC, and one newspaper, the Peace River News. There are 2 Muslim families originally from Pakistan and 3 Sikh families originally from India, and a few First Nations families. The majority of the people were Christians from a European background. We had Bible hour at public school, and I was encouraged to accept Christianity and change my name. I had little concept of a worldview and no perspective of the richness and history of different cultures or religions, including my own. I had no interactions with even Muslims of other races and countries. My childhood assumption was that Muslims only came from Pakistan. I can remember and understand what it's like to be siloed. One of the key reasons I'm honored to work with the other people is that it allows me to help dismantle similar types of false narratives that I was exposed to as a student, including those based on Islamophobia. Islamophobia, or anti-Muslim bigotry, is a prejudice against or demonization of Muslims or Islam, which manifests itself as unfounded or irrational fear and or hatred of Islam or Muslims, or people perceived to be Muslims, leading to violence and systemic discrimination. There have been 11 Islamophobia-motivated murders in Canada since the Quebec City mosque shootings, the highest murder rate in G7 countries for a religious minority. 47% were women or girls, higher than the national average of 30%. 17% of hate online is directed towards Muslims. Violent hate crimes targeting the Muslim population were more likely to occur in an open area. Since the Quebec mosque shootings in 2017, where 6 people were killed, 5 injured by a white supremacist terrorist, there has been another number of killings, the Toronto mosque attack by the Order of Nine Angles, which is a neo-Nazi white supremacist group, the Alberta attacks against Muslim women, 20 attacks reported in the last year, Black women, Muslim, most attacks remain unreported, and the London, Ontario terrorist attack last year, where a family of 4 were run over by a white supremacist terrorist. Types of stereotype I've seen as Muslim. During this outreach work, we learned that the majority of verbal and physical attacks were on visibly Muslim women wearing hijab. Most attacks in British Columbia anyway, take place either on transit, buses, trains, bus stops, or at grocery stores. There are regular reports of Muslim students being verbally discriminated, bullied, or ridiculed for their beliefs by fellow students and even educators and teachers. White supremacist groups, Soldiers of Odin, with bullhorns verbally accosting Muslims going for worship at the Surrey Al Jamia Mosque, unique to other religious groups. Other groups don't necessarily have people shouting at them at their place of worship. And then other stereotypes that Muslims secretly plan to implement Sharia law in Canada, that Muslims oppress women and force them to wear hijab, which are all categorically false, and that Muslims are terrorists, which again, Extremists like Al-Qaeda and ISIS are a tiny fraction of the world's 1.9 billion Muslims, a tiny, tiny fraction. However, there is a perception in the general public that somehow mainstream Muslims share similar views, which is categorically false. So a detailed understanding of online hate and the weaponization of social media. So Moonshot and Google Jigsaw is a program that Google has to share hate-related search terms. So for anti-Muslim bigotry and Islamophobia is ahead of other religious and racial minorities in racist Google search terms. Google data is granular to the postal codes of the hate searches, and per capita, BC is #1 in Canada in Islamophobic hate terms searched. Anti-Muslim hate searches are the top racist search terms. #1, remove kebab. #2, kebab removal. And 3, kill Muslims. Now, what does that mean? Remove kebab is code for killing Muslims by right-wing extremist groups. This is the name of a song Serbian nationalists played during the Bosnian Muslim genocide and ethnic cleansing in the 90s. The Christchurch shooter was playing the Remove Kebab song as he was driving to kill Muslims at 2 mosques. Transatlantic white supremacist terrorism is the gravest threat to Muslims and racialized minorities in BC and North America. The Great Replacement Theory advocates and justifies killing men, women, and children of Muslims and racialized minorities. I want to share some key suggestions for teachers to keep in mind when thinking about solutions to online hate. Addressing digital illiteracy. Increase focus on digital literacy skills in schools. Education focused on dis and misinformation. What are common elements of disinformation, misinformation? Develop active political democratic engagement skills, understanding how algorithms and social media are used or misused and weaponized. And addressing community satirization. Culture competency education for schools and government organizations, increasing awareness on importance of reporting hate crimes, and facilitated direct engagement with other communities or shared concerns, e.g., example, mental health, climate change, through programs like The Other People and the Anti-Racism Roadshow. Thank you.